Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi. Bienvenidos. My name is Erica Marin. I'm the director for the El Paso Museum of History. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, this is a wonderful program brought to you by El Paso Community College, the History Department, and thank you so much, Vanessa Camacho, history professor, fellow historian. Yeah. EPCC in the house. I know a lot of EPCC people here. Thank you, and again, this is an honor to have Dr. Tara Martin López present about her book this evening, and also it's tied greatly to our exhibition, Música Sin Fronteras. In fact, Tara has a beautiful panel that she wrote for us in there about the Chuco punk scene. If you haven't had a chance, please take some time and go through the exhibition. It's one of the best exhibitions in my humble opinion because it ties so many people together. That's one thing that you can say about music. It is a connector in a way that many things are not. Music is where people connect with one another across multiple genres. So let's talk about connecting, and let's talk about Ms. Vanessa Camacho. Thank you so much.
Hello, and good evening. Thank you so much, Erica. So I am here to introduce, along with my wonderful colleagues who I worked with on this project, Margie Nelson Rodriguez, you can give a wave, and Brian Kirby. And together we are here and very happy to introduce Dr. Tara López to talk about her book, Chuco Punk, Sonic Insurgency in El Paso. So this presentation is part of a series of programs funded by El Paso Community College and a Humanities Texas grant. Communities of Sound, Exploring El Chuco's Punk Rock History and Culture, takes an interdisciplinary approach to exploring how El Paso punks built a creative community of resistance. They were united and empowered in mutual support of each other and rebellion against historical erasure, racism, classism, and misogyny. So earlier today, Dr. López spoke to students at EPCC's Trans Mountain campus. It was a wonderful presentation, really speaking to students about how their passion can translate into their research and to uncover stories and histories and experiences that are throughout this region. On April 5th, we're going to bring together a panel to reflect on this community and their experiences at Eloise Restaurant at 7 p.m. And finally, on April 10th, we'll see how the punk ethos was translated to the big screen with a screening of Repo Man at Rio Grande campus. And that's going to be 6 p.m. April 10th at Rio Grande. So we hope that this is just the beginning of your exploration of this topic and that you'll join us in those other events as well. A big thanks to Humanities Texas and El Paso Community College for funding these programs, Erica Marin and Carlos Espinosa here at the museum for helping us put it together, EPCC TV for filming the presentation. This recording will become part of a library research guide supporting communities of sound, and that'll be available through the EPCC library so that again, this history doesn't go overlooked anymore and students can have access to it. So now let's turn to our speaker. So Dr. Tara López is the director and assistant professor of ethnic studies and Latinx studies at Winona State University. She received her PhD from the University of Manchester in sociology. Her work looks at race, gender, and social movements. In 2014, she published her first book, The Winter of Discontent, Myth, Memory, and History, and she has published articles in a variety of journals and given presentations on El Paso's punk scene at state, national, and international conferences, and of course at public events. So thank you so much, Tara. So here we go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Camacho. I'm going to hold it like really punk rock. I never know how to hold microphones except for what I've learned from punk rock shows. So thank you, Erica Marin. Thank you all here at the History Museum and those of you at EPCC. Knowledge and history is important. It's essential to preserve, and especially here in El Paso. again, I'm Dr. Tara López. I teach at Winona State University in Winona, Minnesota, where we had a blizzard last week, and now I am like basking in the beauty of El Paso and its heat. So it's so wonderful to see you. I just want to make sure everybody has a seat. There are extra seats being added. No throwing seats. Maybe after the talk you can throw some seats, but I want to be on Erica's good side, right? But this is about punk rock, and this is about you. It is about me, but it's about you. This is why we're going to talk about Rascuache, the DIY culture in El Paso. So again, I want to thank everybody, especially Drs. Vanessa Camacho, Margie Nelson Rodriguez, and Brian Kirby, for really ferreting me around all day around El Paso to different talks, for being so welcoming. And most especially, I want to thank you for attending here, this rollickingly academic talk. I know, you can take out your notebooks now, but those are not counterposed, that's not a juxtaposition. It's gonna be a bit academic, but it's gonna be punk rock and fun. And you know what, to add on the top of it, it's gonna be El Paso, so it's gonna be down. And it's a very proud honor to be presenting to you, because I wrote this book for you all. The Tri-Cities area, whether you're from the Tri-Cities area, Las Cruces, Juarez, or El Paso, this book, my work, my efforts have been made to honor you. But most importantly, no matter where I am when I'm talking about this, I gotta thank the punks, many of whom are here. Well, I'm gonna get all it. Se me emociona, I'm sorry. Because I love you guys so much. So, as a researcher and from the deep well of my punk rock corazon, I give profound thanks to the El Paso punks who shared stories, time, and carefully curated personal collections of photos, flyers, and music, almost all of which you see. Everything that you see here is because of the generosity and love of these beautiful, magnificent punk rockers. And again, in this presentation, titled Rascuache, the DIY Culture of Punk Rock, of El Paso Punk. See, I don't even know the title of my talk. That's super punk rock. Okay, so I'm gonna nerd out. This is my research, but the key thing about it, and what I was explaining earlier today to these awesome El Paso Community College students, is that I had the ability to talk to 55 punks from El Paso, because I knew that I did not just want to be talking about a punk rock music world, a punk rock music scene in a very special place without going to the people who know it the best, the punk rockers. So I talked to 55 people, but I pestered many people several times. So I'm very glad that none of them had any restraining orders put on me or ever blocked me. Like, hey, is this really the name of that band? Or, hey, do you have a picture? Or can I use this picture? So very deep generosity, but just know you got the facts, because it came from their experiences. Another thing is that a very important question is like, well, how could you verify things? Well, first and foremost, in marginalized communities, oftentimes we don't appear in newspapers, we don't appear in books, but many of the events and other things that the punks described, oftentimes I could verify in local newspapers like the El Paso Times, the El Paso Herald, different publications, or their own publications. So many of the punks, like many communities, are their own archivists. Finally, again, hopefully, but I was lucky to earn the trust of many of those punks, so they shared flyers, zines, music, photos that are unarchived. Now, I want to tell you, if anybody comes after me after this talk to ask me about the archiving, you have to ask the punks. It's their stuff. These are on loan because for some reason, they're just very generous and kind to me, and I want to honor that this is their cultural production. And for all of you in El Paso, in many ways, it's your cultural production. It's not mine. I'm just kind of this conduit to share your magnificent stories. So I'm very lucky, and you're very lucky to see many of these items because they were very generous to share them, not only with me, but with you. And then finally, in El Paso, you guys have great historians like Yolanda Leyva, David Romo, Monica Perales, among many others. So I read histories because what happened here was and is historic. And that is why it deserved to be in a book. And not just one book, I'm waiting for all the other books that are going to be written, not just about this awesome punk rock scene, but everything else that's happening in this wonderful city. Yeah. But the thing is, I'm not from El Paso. So, like, poser. Okay, I know, it's okay. All right, so why am I talking to you? Because I'm a 7th generation New Mexican. I think actually a couple more generations, because, related to Picary's Pueblo gente. So like I got a lot of, my indigenous ancestors are up there in northern New Mexico, in addition to Taos. So we'll just say 7th generation New Mexican. It's gonna be good. So, okay. I was born in Las Cruces and raised in the colonia of Doñana until I was about 4 or 5. And this is talking about documented evidence. This is my father, Carlos, there in a cowboy hat he probably stole from the Kmart in Las Cruces. And this is me in all my glory, probably annoying the hell out of my dad, right? But why? Why is this important? Well, one, we all know that this is part of this Tri-Cities area. And in many ways, it's like, but still there's this border. Again, it's a colonial border, but like, why is this little girl and now grown woman interested in El Paso? Well, because everything special has been associated with this place. So since I was a girl, especially for my dad and many Nuevo Mexicanos like him, El Paso is the safe place in West Texas. Meaning when I'm saying safe, he and others like them can come to this part of Texas and be treated with respect, not get pulled over and feel connection, and then go to Juarez and go buy stuff or get dentistry and stuff like that. Like it's special, right? That you have to understand that your city is so special. So my dad constantly talked about it, and after I started this research, he started to tell me, oh yeah, I used to take you there all the time. I used to take you to that Western Playland thing, and then we'd have Girl Scout meetings. I was like, wow, okay, maybe that's why you keep on talking about it today. And even though my dad is from the northern New Mexican town, or his family is, the López's are from the northern New Mexican town of Taos, he continues to speak of southern New Mexico, including El Paso in that phrasing, with much more affection. Now, my dad's a very smart guy. He's neither oblivious of geography nor history. But when I interrupted him while he was in the middle of watching some Spantos, I was like, well, why do you like El Paso so much? He's like, okay, El Paso just fits in culturally and needs to come back to New Mexico. Now I'm back. Okay, let me watch my show. Okay, but it's just natural. For him, this is still New Mexico. And just a little piece of information, El Paso was the capital of New Mexico in 1680. So we have a deep history, right? So what should be, we got it, yeah, we are connected. We are connected. So what should be apparent is that the strong sense of affection for El Paso has been omnipresent throughout my life, forging this really close emotional proximity that continues to endure today, an emotional proximity that is only comparable to my love of punk rock music, yeah. So punk rock, and I have to say it like this now because I gotta use the punk rock, yeah. Punk rock is a blitzkrieg of sound that shatters musical conventions. Sociologist Nick Crossley vigorously sums it up, quote, punk made music matter. Punk was a catalyst, battering a hole in the walls of the popular music world, creating opportunities and encouraging widespread participation, unquote. Punk mattered to me and my sister, too, as you can see here, when I saw my first Bikini Kill show, because Word Salad was opening for them. Once we moved to Albuquerque, the big city, nothing comparable to El Paso, the punk opportunities were endless. The punk community, which included many of the punks I interviewed for the book created a sense of belonging among fellow outsiders, most of whom were punks of color, many of whom were from El Paso. So as I eventually burrowed myself into academics and emerged as an academic myself, punk rock continued to shape me emotionally and became the focus of my work. So indeed, if you walked into this talk wondering, what does punk rock have to do with the deep history and culture of a city like El Paso? Everything. You knew that was going to be the answer, right? You didn't come here to be like for some milquetoast answer. You got to have some power to it. Everything, not only based on my academic research, but also a visceral certainty. I have always known that El Paso and punk are the most likely of pairings. While punk is known for its daring subversion, so too is El Paso. Indeed, according to historian Gerardo Licon, in the 19th century, El Paso's reputation as a criminal outpost of sin at the time was so widespread that its nickname soon became Chuco, a derivation of the word for crooked or illegal. So to be clear, El Paso is the natural staging site of a punk rock revolution. And many of those revolutionaries, again, are here. So you gotta buckle up. It's time to buckle up and gaze upon the splendor of the wonderful Franklin Mountains. So now when I give this part, usually people don't know what El Paso is. You're like, but you guys, you're all, I just saw it right there, right? Whatever, Tara, come on. I'm like, but it's still pretty. And in their shadow is the rich history of a city that has nourished the DIY culture that rooted in a ferocious punk commitment to sound, fun, community, and the most punk rock aspect of all, and that is love. With our coordinates set, we're on our way to Chuco Town. I need some train music with that part, right? Okay. So what about this title real fast? What are these terms? Well, I know you guys know a lot of those terms. Well, let's get into it. Just in case people don't know about punk rock culture, we want to be inclusive, because that's punk rock, right? So we'll start with this do-it-yourself ethos. Punk rock emerged out of a rejection of what was seen as corporate domination of the cultural means of production. Indeed, every aspect for music, recording style, and shows were steeped in that do-it-yourself DIY ethos. So Sarah Marcus, who writes this really awesome book on the history of Riot Grrrl in the 1990s, notes, quote, DIY was a philosophy and a way of life, a touchstone that set its industrious adherents apart from the legions of Americans who passed their lives, as punks saw it, treating art and culture as commodities, instead of vital sources to be struggled and shaped, experimented with, created, breathed, and lived, unquote. Man, that's good. Breathed and lived instead of bought, and that's totally DIY. And then she gives some additional information. DIY is about creating something from nothing, fashion from garbage, music and art from whatever was nearest at hand, unquote. And it's the second definition that is the most connected and resonant with Rascuache. So yes, there are some awesome books on punk rock and Rascuache, especially Chicano punk rock, and this is the mero one. Like, this is a seminal book, Michelle Abel Payan's Locomotion, The Travels of Chicana and Latina Popular Culture. And she delves into the history, mainly in California, of Latina and Chicana popular culture, but she also talks about the vibrant punk rock scene in LA, like Alice Bag, The Plugs, which are from here, right? These awesome bands. But she makes this connection when she writes, quote, the do-it-yourself sensibility at the core of punk rock music subcultures found resonance in the Chicano cultural practice of rascuache, or making do with limited resources, unquote. Just note there are two ways that it appears, right? Sometimes with the Q, sometimes with the C, but don't worry, the same word. It's more of an academic kind of connection, but still really powerful. I like Sandra Cisneros, the poet and novelist, when she puts, because this is where, like, I can totally see rascuache, right? She defines it as the term for making something from readily available parts, an old tire transformed into a planter, a shed patched with hubcaps, a toy airplane made from a beer can. Poverty is the mother of invention, unquote. So, Abel Payan's use of, or connection between DIY and rascuache is pretty innovative. And you think, okay, that kind of makes sense. It's kind of like the same definition of things. She's being a smart person, academic. Does it really mean anything? Well, it does mean everything. It's so significant because historically, punk rock has been associated with punk culture. Whether it's journalists or academics or even some punks themselves, punk has been defined as white culture. And Michael Board wrote this in Maximum Rock and Roll in the 1980s. He writes brashly, quote, "Punk is white and suburban," unquote. And even though he actually right after recognizes the black hardcore band Bad Brains, okay man, get with it, he later reiterates, quote, "Punk was the first white music since the 1960s psychedelic stuff," unquote. So he erases everybody, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, indigenous folks that also created punk rock. So when Abel Payan says that, oh yeah, rascuache, like DIY is rascuache and rascuache is DIY, she's situating punk rock and Chicanx culture, like Mexican American culture, saying this is ours too, hello, this is ours too. Look, we've had this tradition for ages. Because she acknowledges, quote, "Mainstream representations of punk represent punk culture as a white boy only fad. In fact, punk had various and competing strains. It was not one thing. Therefore, by connecting these two, you connect them to all the communities of color that actually contributed to the creation of punk rock. It wasn't just white music, and it never has been, and it isn't now." So when we think about punk rock here in El Paso and DIY culture here in El Paso, rascuache is not just a track, a 1999 track from the El Paso punk band at the drive-in. It was something that really defined one of these various and competing strains here in El Paso, meaning El Paso was one of these revolutionary punk rock movements that was, yes, multiracial, but predominantly Mexican American. And so what I'm going to show you today, because I got to show you, you're like, well, what's the evidence? Come on. Well, the evidence is that when you take the sound, when you take the shows, when you take the zine, El Paso punk rock is puro rascuache. So this person is in the audience. Can you raise your hand, Serge? Yeah, whoa, punk rock, yeah, we got all this, like, we got the stars here. Thank you for letting me use this. So this awesome person, Sergio Mendoza, this is a photo of him at around age 17, again, AK Serge, purchased a 4-track mixer and started doing sound for bands who came into town, which developed his engineering prowess and attracted the attention of punks who were eager to record and release their music with a more raw and less sold out edge to their sound. Serge guided bands to his bedroom where he placed his beloved 4-track mixer in the closet, and the bands played in his bedroom. Afterwards, the lead singer entered into the closet to just record the vocals. His friend and Lower Valley punk, Phil Heimer right here, yeah, come on, yeah, Phil, who is very adoring and acknowledges the brilliance of Serge, explained to me in an interview decades later, quote, "You can record on the best equipment, but not capture the soul of the band. And somehow Serge was always able to do that," unquote. Yeah, Verified source there. There we go. Both the only source. Both recorded and live, the El Paso punk sound was rascuache to the core, stripped down and explosive expression rooted in the DIY rascuache resourcefulness, just like Serge's recordings. Yeah. And then also you got all these labels. They did it themselves. So these are just two of the labels. I know there were others, but you know, we got food coming, so we got to take care of that stuff. So with Serge's prowess, El Paso's Yucky Bus, which is one of the labels from the lower valley of El Paso, became one of the city's staple labels. Lower Valley punk Ernesto Ibarra created the Yucky Bus label in 1993. The same year, El Paso punk Jim Ward took over the independent label Western Breed. Both the engineering and the release of music these punks created was made with very few resources, but with a wellspring of deep creativity and ingenuity that again was rascuache to the core. So what were they recording? Well, they were recording the music. They were there for the music, right? That's the most important part. That's probably why you all are here. Like, where's the music, man? All these academic words. What about the sound? Well, these punks everywhere, and I'm particularly focused right now on the 90s because I'm a 90s kid, but if you read the book, there's more. The performances took place anywhere, from under the Bridge of Americas here in El Paso to record stores throughout the nation. Jason's one of the key archivists. A lot of things that are up on YouTube from Spitch are because of Jason. But when I was in East Texas, somebody talked about like that kind of singing, not particular to her, as like Cookie Monster singing, and I was like, I love Cookie Monster singing, especially when it's Jenny Cisneros, you know? I got the chance, the honor to meet her in November, and she's like the kindest person, but it's just so miraculous that this huge sound comes out of this like relatively tiny person. It's just amazing. Okay, so this is what you want to know about are the shows. And I can't really talk about them all. Okay, so as you can hear, see, and actually feel, I hope you could feel that, right? Again, her voice is so resonant and beautiful. Their sound was unfettered, and it did not matter if it were a record store in Los Angeles where she was singing or the band was playing, or anywhere in El Paso. El Paso punks really had a voracious appetite for sound, but it could be really difficult, especially in the 90s, because the bars and clubs had a stranglehold on shows. So punks had to do it on their own. And one of their creations was the rug burn. So in 1996, again, this is going to be the key year that I'm going to talk about, Lower Valley punks Alex Martinez and Carlos Palacios were increasingly frustrated with the punks busting backyard shows and lugging gear throughout the city for shows. Martinez and Palacios also envisioned a nonprofit place like Gilman Street in Berkeley that brought out-of-town bands and sidestepped the for-profit music ventures like the Attic and E9. They needed really a place like the Rug Burn. So Martinez and Palacios worked with other punks to secure money to rent a car repair shop that was located on the main strip of Alameda Avenue. What you can see here is this is one of the membership cards from the Rug Burn that Alex took a picture of and lent to me. And their choice was strategic because the venue was right off a major exit of I-10, making it easily accessible for punks throughout the city. So this is a time when the different scenes around the city were beginning to unite. Again, doing it all on their own. They then put their DIY ethos to work by soundproofing the small venue, by covering it with carpet and nailing upholstery sponge to the ceiling to create a viable venue for punks throughout the city. This guy's in the house too. Tony! So, so once they started the shows, they realized that the building was not only shared with another business, but the owner's family lived in that building and had access to the breaker box. So when the shows got too loud, and really, punk rock shows getting loud? Come on, yeah, all the time. So what would happen was that the family would cut off the electricity right in the middle of the show. But Palacios and Martinez were really good. They talked to the family. They were able to smooth things over with the family, and eventually the family started sending their children down to sell sodas, cacahuates, dulces, and chincles to all these like hungry punks. Yeah, so there's a lot of nodding heads, right? You guys were hungry. So not just like the construction, but the collaboration and negotiation is just like stupendous, right? So these were kids with nothing, and they built all of this together with very few resources, doing it themselves, but all the time honoring their Rascuache roots. Oh, okay. This happens all the time, you know? It's like a New Mexican laptop. See, really, the only way to deal with this is like some Rascuache help. I need help from my compa, Tony. Can you help me? Because you've helped me with this. He's the technician that's the only one that's able to help me deal with this issue. Okay. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know this awesome vato. This is Tony Leal. Okay. So Tony, one of the millions of bands that Tony has been in was the Sick Teens, right? So the way to deal with this technical issue is that we're gonna see a clip, and every time you see me and Tony go like this and you hear APB, we all need to go, APB. Yeah?
All right.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's how you
Okay.
go. APB.
Now you have somebody from the band here to verify that, right? Is that, can you help me with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So let's practice, because I think you guys are lying. Fist up. Yeah, fist up. Yeah. Okay, wait. And now I'm gonna say it. APB. Let's do APB. APB. Okay, we got stretching, right? Okay. APB. 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 Yeah, Tony. Thank you for helping me. You always need somebody to help with technical issues, so Tony has to like come to my talks a lot. Okay. But, okay, so let's just make sure that we give everybody their due. So another key constellation of sound of this like awesome punk rock culture were the backyard shows, right? And one of the most notable ones was Erica Ortegon's backyard. So this Lower Valley punk, along with her best friend Lindy Hernandez, so I don't even think this little thing goes anywhere. So the one with the glasses there, that's Erica, and then Lindy is to your right there. So these two are the chingona, mera chingonas. These are two amazingly brilliant and creative women. So Ortegon relates that she first proposed having shows in her backyard by insisting that her mom allow her to invite bands to her birthday party. Now parents, watch out, because this is an opening. This is like a gateway drug. So one show turned into several, and her backyard transformed into the DIY venue known as the Arboleda House. To provide electricity to the backyard, Ortegon would have to run an extension cord through her mother's bedroom window and plug the cord into her mother's bedroom wall. So there's this like Rascuache type of like engineering, right? A practice that made the shows very precarious, just like at the rug burn. So she remembers that during one show, she had left the connection of the cord to someone else, who instead of connecting it to her mother's bedroom, connected it to the bedroom light. So when she would talk about this, she explained in an interview with me, quote, so the band would be playing and everyone's getting excited and someone would use the bathroom. or turn off the light, and the music would stop, unquote. So again, there's a pattern. You guys are seeing a pattern. So Ortegón and Hernandez's resourcefulness, literally and conceptually, not only it reflects this DIY ethos, but also this Mexican tradition of rascuache, where she and Lindy used discarded lumber and punk rock labor and ingenuity to create rollicking punk rock shows. And you're going to see these ladies again because they're going to be at the forefront of creating zines. So the final element, and there's so many elements of this punk rock culture, but you know, you guys want to go home or maybe watch the baseball game or eat some food, or give me a hard time, which is good. So scholar Allison Feitmeyer defines zines as self-produced, anti-corporate, anti-professional, quote, quirky, individualized booklets filled with diatribes, reworkings of iconography, and all variety of personal and political narratives, unquote. So El Paso punks in the 1990s used zines as powerful tools of expression to really show us the complexity of lives, especially women's lives. You're gonna see deep political insights to personal insights that have to do with struggles, particularly with being like their Chicana identity, or sometimes just about love and crushes and just having fun, right? So that's a great thing about zines. It's like we all have this spectrum of who we are, and the zines really give insight into these young people, especially in the 1990s. So the meta, really, of this zine culture is Lindy Hernandez. Yes, you saw her again. Yeah, she's unstoppable. So she was the mastermind behind the mid to late 90s zine Candy from Strangers, where she not only brought her love of punk, but her political acumen to the fore. In the 1997 edition of Candy from Strangers, she responded to the excesses of militarization along the Mexican and US border. So we have to get back to a little bit of history, a very important moment in history. On May 20th, 1997, US citizen, again, he was a US citizen, and high school sophomore Ezequiel Hernandez was herding goats near Redford, Texas. Maureen Clemente Banuelos mistook Ezequiel as a threat because the 18-year-old was supposedly brandishing a rifle to protect his goats. So again, he was a US citizen. With one shot, Banuelos killed Ezequiel, a murder that did not go unnoticed by El Paso punk Lindy. Again, no relation. In her zine, Lindy is scathing, quote, "The killers of Ezequiel Hernandez went free and no one cares," unquote. She decried the senseless killing of a Mexican-American teenager and was appalled that in the predominantly Mexican El Paso, nobody seemed to care about the murder. She ends with the chilling questions, quote, "So do I have a reason for getting worked up about this? Or should I just assimilate to the rest of society and turn my cheek?" Unquote. Both the political commentary that hopefully you can see and feel is also a reflection on her identity. And they illustrate how the zine, which was made with like stolen Xerox copies, and you can see it's just like there's collages and drawings and everything, really gives insight into her trying to reconcile her political outrage with her racial and ethnic identity. You can also see that the focus of this zine is on Mexican-American politics and also a reflection of where she is from and continues to live, because there's a fluid use of English and Spanish, just like you hear in El Paso. As you see here, libertad a los presos políticos, freedom to political prisoners, and then you have also humor in the same thing. You have it all at once. The little punk rock alien right there with the, the mohawk. It's like you have humor, political insight, and outrage. Go see, not the alien. So again, this is like entirely rascuache. But like the politics sometimes are very deeply personal. So these are those two gals. This is Erica, who was a partner in crime with Lindy in the Arboleda house. Arboleda house was her house. So struggle with identity also appears in the same issue of the zine from Hernandez's friend Erica, who wrote how in a magazine, again, this is 90s, so there was like a magazine, and there was a quiz, and the title of the quiz was, "Are you pura Latina?" And she wrote in the zine that according to the quiz, she failed. She failed the quiz. Wonderful Erica Ortegon failed the quiz and was ranked pseudo-Latina by this magazine quiz because she was purportedly too assimilated. She explains, it's kind of right here, quote, "Just because I wear Converse tennis shoes instead of high heels, they say I deny my Latina blood. Also because I didn't know who Selena was until she died, means I'm not Latina," unquote. She explains further, quote, "Being Latina in my case comes from something inside, something nobody can take away from you. Who you are doesn't come from the material things you have or the way you speak. You should be proud of who you are. You don't have to look like it in order to believe in it," unquote. Ugh, every time I read that, it just makes me cry. She's awesome. She's so really insightful. Caught between these rigid ideas of who's authentically Latina, I guess this magazine supposedly is, and these broader conceptions of punk rock as white music, Ortegon gives voice to Chicanas like her forging their own identity and culture despite these pressures. And her medium of expression were these zines that were rooted in this tradition of rascuache. So you're like, okay, all right, so who cares? Other than like, it's fun, we gotta sing, gotta raise our fist in the air and feel all powerful, which I hope you did. But you gotta get this is where the history professor comes in. And this has so much deep meaning, especially in a place like El Paso, but anywhere today. And we can heed the words of the mural nearby from the Duranguito neighborhood from Tonita Morales, where it reads, "Una ciudad que olvida su pasado no tiene futuro." A city that forgets its past does not have a future. So history and culture in so many ways are sacred, especially as grounding for identity, particularly amongst marginalized communities, but they're also guides forward to a more meaningful future. And poet and music critic, and also a big fan of El Paso punk rock, Hanif Abdurraqib, would agree with Tonita when he writes, quote, that this is the thing about history and people who come from a people who have had it taken from them. They know if they don't protect what they can, there will be nothing to pass on to their children, unquote. What Abdurraqib reveals is that cultural traditions like punk rock, or pachuquismo for that matter, were oftentimes the only focal point of creative agency, meaning when denied an education, denied the right to read, write, the right to vote, the right to loiter on a corner, Indigenous peoples, African Americans, Mexican Americans, and other communities of color especially sought refuge and expression in music, dance, style, and overall culture. And when they did, the cultural expression was often seen as a dangerous form of rebellion and eliminated or ignored at all costs. Therefore, just as it was incumbent on Americo Paredes to salvage the work of corridos, it is our duty to preserve and honor the music and style of El Paso. Because when we do that, for instance, we're preserving the birthplace of Pachuquismo. So despite the surprise not to you, but unfortunately to people who aren't from El Paso, despite surprise at the city's subcultural creativity, its nickname of Chuco adamantly declares its subcultural identity and resists the historical amnesia of its roots. Its foundation is deeply intertwined with the tradition of rascuache and cultural resistance, originating in the early 20th century, and even before that, and continuously being created and recreated and revived throughout the decades. So these El Paso punks, again, many of them who are here, many of whom cannot be here, were and are part of this continual process of using a few tools at their disposal to create masterpieces just like their Pachuca and Pachuco ancestors. Both subcultures created scaffolding not only of creativity, but of a connection to historical and cultural pride. And the stakes are high. right now. So honoring our histories and our culture have never been so important. But the pressures to erase history and culture are really quite old, especially here in El Paso. At the end of the 19th century, Anglo-run newspaper editors praised the erasure of Mexican power and culture from El Paso's landscape. For them, quote, "The removal of ancient adobe with all their bad associations means a new life for El Paso," unquote. Almost a century later, these El Paso punks reaffirmed their multiracial, especially Mexican identities by engaging in rascuachismo and reaffirming their Mexicana, Mexicano, Mexicana roots. As El Paso punk Ernesto Ibarra adamantly reaffirms, people must remember that Mexican, indigenous, and poor kids created punk rock music here in El Paso. It didn't have to do with money, right? It was without economic means, but with a visceral passion for sound, creativity, and community that they constructed something that not only satiated their appetites for punk rock, but also reaffirmed their cultural practice of rascuache. But unfortunately, not too much is known about this. Hopefully more and more is known about this dynamic music culture, especially the one that flourished in the 90s, but also 70s, and hopefully today. However, George Lipsitz counters that even if people are not acknowledging it, quote, "obliterating suppressed memories and desires requires constant vigilance," unquote. But all is not lost. According to Lipsitz, he explains, quote, "We may never succeed in finding out all that has happened in history, but events matter, and describing them as accurately as possible can at the very least show us whose foot has been on whose neck," unquote. Therefore, we can see today that the memories of these punks, of Pachuquismo, and other aspects of cultural production here in El Paso, and a wide array of DIY rascuache creative works have proved themselves as a form of cultural insurgency against historical oblivion. So at the beginning of the next century, an awareness of documenting this memory appears from the Chicana punk band Fea. I love Fea. But in their wonderful song, No Hablo Español, they reiterate, they have a chorus, where they say, "This is what I remember, my past will not surrender." This lyric's resonance is a power reflection of how these young people were part of almost a centuries-long rebellious tradition of rascuache. Moreover, it sheds light on the powerful way music connects us beyond the present and future, but never allows us to forget. Thank you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I think I left my water elsewhere, but I am happy to take any questions. If somebody can hand me a water, please, thank you. I get all emotional and then my voice breaks and I can't. Are there any questions or comments? And then also you're welcome to, I don't know, I'm volunteering. There are many of the real experts here in the audience, so we can pass around. Thank you very much, Vanessa. We can pass around, or you can come up here and use this awesome punk rock microphone. Yeah, so the question was was there a hurdle that kind of, that made me maybe want to give up? Did I get that correct? Yeah, I was working in New Mexico and I was self-financing my research. There were no funds for the research. And I love New Mexico, almost all my tattoos are Zia tattoos. I love my state, but it was heartbreaking, so I left to Minnesota, and I really do love Minnesota. But I knew that to complete this book, and I knew it was really important to do as quickly as possible, because also I didn't want anybody else to write it and write out the lower valley kids, the Chicanas. If you see some histories of scenes, especially women just get written out, maybe a tiny little footnote, hey, that's cute. You're no, they were doing, you saw Erica Ortegon and Lindy Hernandez, that's not cute, that's powerful and genius, right? So that was probably the most formidable one. But I work at a great university. It's hard to not be here, because like when I'm in El Paso, I feel like I'm in New Mexico. It's not a surprise. We're very close, right? So that was like a big hurdle, but I overcame that. And then the second one is like I did it during COVID. So thankfully, the punks would let me call them, talk to them, and so forth. So other than that, I guess the final one is that we as women are socialized to not think our words matter. So even though many of the guys were like, oh, you got to talk to like Sophie Ortiz or talk, there were more. Only 18 out of the 55 were women. And I wish there were more, but some were like, oh, I don't really have anything to say. But then I talked to everybody else, they're like, well, she was doing this and this and this. So I will never give up. So my next book is all about the women. So after I published thank you. So after I published the book, during the book release that was here in El Paso, some of like the brothers and cousins of the women that were like, no, and I understand I'm not from here, but like felt like they didn't have anything to say. They're like, yeah, man, she just like saw that you published the book and now she's thinking she should have talked to you. I was like, okay, let's talk to her now, right now. So yeah, thank you. But if you're a researcher, just keep on doing it. You just don't give up, because like when you feel this, this actually is better done when I'm not here, because I get too emotional when I'm around the people, especially the people that I wrote the book for. That's kind of a little bit hard. But get me in like East Texas and you'll be like, oh, that's much clearer. It's much clearer. But it's like you all deserve the best, and I put I was willing to leave my home state so I can make sure that I could write this. And I love to write too. It's personal too, but I wanted to make sure you guys got the best. So, thanks, great, excellent question, right? So who is this young man? Philheimer, Mr. Philheimer. Thank you. Well, there's like punk rock love and punk rock trust, which is I honor. So if you all entrusted me with your stories and everything, your photos, like I have to bring it. So whatever El Paso tells me to do, I'm there. It's a long flight, and I miss my puppies, but I want to honor them. And the things that I am missing, that means you all can do it and do even better. So like, hopefully this is a stepping stone of like, well, she missed this. Well, I'm like, I know, I want to read your book. Go write about that one, and then I'll read your book, and I'll be in the audience, and I'll be like, yeah. So, but yeah, thank you. I love you guys. Yeah, it was, and I'm looking at some of the people who sent me a lot of names, and I couldn't follow up with all of them because I wanted to make sure it got written as soon as possible. And then also with the subcultures part, yeah, because like there were a lot of people I talked to, because I was actually going to do some freestyle rap, and there was some really cool guys that I interviewed that were around my age, or a little bit older, that did freestyle rap, and they were so awesome. But I was like, then I'd have to do that, and I would want to honor that, and I wouldn't do it well. So yeah, or heavy metal too. There's another punk here. Do you mind me? Well, it's in the book. So like Franco would kick it with the rocker chicks, and I was like, I want to do that too. But then I couldn't, it would just be too much. And so I hope somebody else can do it, or maybe I can touch on it when I talk to more women about it. Yeah, it's like you can keep on going. And the thing about me is that like I'm impatient. I think that's very punk rock to be very impatient. I'm like, okay, I don't want to just be telling people forever, oh, I'm going to write a book. And then there's Tara, she's just writing a book. But it never comes out. But especially since I owed it to them, since they put in all the effort to talk to me and spend time with me, it was my obligation, or it's just my honor to give back to them. So yeah, it was really difficult. There's so much out there. It's such a big city, and you guys have so much culture. Like, it's so hard to put it. I'm just surprised that there's not more books about El Paso. So hint, go do it. I gotta be back there. So so thank you. Yeah, and please explore other subcultures here, because there's so many. Oh, sorry. Follow up. So with some of the oral history, I know I'm rolling at myself. So first of all, with the oral histories, many of which have been archived at the UTEP Oral History Project, thanks to the mera of all historians, Doctora Yolanda Leiva. I love Yuli. I ate food with her yesterday. she should be venerated at all times in the city. So some of the oral histories are there because I didn't want it to just be on my computer. The flyers are theirs. Like people like, let's say for instance, Tony just was like, here, I'll scan a whole bunch of flyers and photos. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So actually, I probably eventually will delete my copies because they're his. Like, I just don't think I should have them because it's his stuff for hopefully them as punks to decide who archives it. And you know, there's community archives. There's actually an archive, a community archive of punk rock in DC where they do it themselves. And it's not universities, because some of us universities have bad reputations of what we do with the ephemera, especially from marginalized communities, working class and communities of color. So do it, they could be Arasquatchie and have their own like archive. They could do it. I probably couldn't. I just kick it with my dogs and enjoy what they do. Thank you for the excellent questions. Yes. I only read about that in Abel Payan's book, but no, not from anybody I heard. No, sorry, yeah. Well, the people, so really the most significant aspect of my research was on the 90s punk, but when I did talk to punks from the 70s and early 80s, they were mainly focused on Tito Lariva, which was really important as well, but not as much as Alice Bagg, who's like awesome. And unfortunately, I found out about her probably when I was in my 30s. I wish I knew about her when I was in my 20s, when my dad was like, really, you could comb your hair. I think he thought I was abandoning my culture by being a punk. Like, are you ashamed? Are you okay? Here's a comb, right? Why is your hair uneven? Because I had like one side this short and this one long, and he just was sad. I think he thought I was a devil worshiper. Poor man. He's still alive though. I didn't shock him too much. But yeah, it's an excellent question and definitely something to pursue. I think, yeah. Well, I do have to say, yeah, that's freaking awesome. It's so cool to learn about them because like when I feel sad, I feel sometimes very sad and afraid. But then I'm just like, well, look what they did. Okay, get up, Tara. You know, like, be a big girl, you can do it. And then also South Milwaukee, because now I work in Winona, with southeastern Minnesota. I work with a great historian, Sergio Gonzalez. There's a large Mexican and Puerto Rican community in South Milwaukee. And he does great history, but I'm so sure that there's like a punk rock scene, especially, well, definitely Milwaukee, but South Milwaukee. So I'm learning about the Midwest, it's so interesting. And also the first band to ever be described as punk was a Midwestern Chicano band from Michigan, from Saginaw, Michigan. That's ? and the Mysterians. 96 Tears, if you know the song 96 Tears. So Midwest Chicanos, they were already doing it. But we just need to know the history, right? So we're aware that like punk rock is for everybody. It's not supposed to just be like what Michael Board says and maybe some academics. Like it should be inclusive because it was created by all sorts of people. So yeah, I'm glad it's illuminating. Maybe one more question before you eat, because also I'm hungry. Pardon me. Yeah. Yeah, I think even in the 90s, I'm sure the other punks were telling us that, well, yeah, because I've dated some of those older punks, they'd be like, you guys are sellouts, man. Especially because I was like, when I came into the scene, Hot Topic was coming up. So it was like, oh, so you can buy your punk, you can buy your fashion, right? And I was kind of criticized that, but sometimes I probably bought stuff there. So I think even if you buy this stuff, it doesn't mean you can't still create your own stuff. So like my niece lives in the Pilsen little village area of Chicago, you know, where Los Crudos are from, right? And like she's, like sometimes I'm like, wow, like she's always, you know, it takes 5 hours to do herself up and I just think she's perfect. Why is she doing all that? And I give her my old Bikini Kill shirts, so, because I know she likes them, but I just thought, oh, she gives them to her friends or whatever. And then she has this flannel on and she turns around and she had cut out the Bikini Kill part and had sewn it into her flannel. And I was like, oh, mijita, I'm so proud of you. And then she came with me to see Kathleen Hanna's book. So like, yeah, like if they buy things or if they use Instagram, like I'm not on social media. Like I have a hard time with social media because people make money off of it. But if they use it to like, you know, coordinate shows and they find meaning, and they find community. Like, yeah, because like I have a car, I buy stuff. Like we do buy things, right? So I don't think, the youth are probably doing all kinds of badass stuff. So just one to end it on a good note, just like, because I think just seeing that every generation is like the youth. Even my students who are 20 years old, back in the day, I used to climb trees. I'm like, really? Are you sure? Because that's what I said, right? I think, because even in the 50s, there was like outrage, like they're buying all these vinyl records, right? Elvis Presley. So I would say maybe taking it with like at least if they're interested in alternative cultures, whatever they can get out of it. But I went to this conference in Houston, and there was a guy my age, and he has a daughter who does like hip hop, but they're kind of like punk rock shows. He's like, yeah, so I was like the old dude that went with her and her like 13 friends, and they hooked up their generator and their amps to like the electricity at behind a festival grocery store. And he was like, they were like doing all kinds of crazy stuff and throwing stuff in the the garbage cans and the dumpsters. And he's like, it was totally cool, except for like, I was the dad, and I was like, but I was just all, I'm so proud of your daughter. I just think that's so beautiful. Like they're still doing it. They might just not like want us to know about it. Like people are innovative. I'm sorry. So yeah, like I think some people are buying stuff and doing bad stuff, but some of them are just like, I buy stuff and I don't know. I'm not going to shows because I get sleepy at 8 p.m. But, just maybe having some kind of understanding that they probably are doing awesome stuff. Even if they might like that spider punk thing, which I didn't know that was a deal, they might also be like throwing awesome shows behind your house and you're like, why is my electricity bill so high? It could be. Look closely. So vamos a comer. Thank you for being here. I'm going to hang out. Keep on talking. Thank you.